The notification sound pierced the silence of the bedroom at 3:15 in the morning. Regina White lay perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as her husband's phone illuminated the nightstand. This wasn't the first time Nathan's phone had buzzed at such an ungodly hour, not even the 10th time. She turned her head slightly, watching his chest rise and fall in deep slumber, completely undisturbed by the sound that had shattered her own rest for weeks now. Something had changed between them, something fundamental. Regina couldn't pinpoint exactly when the shift had occurred, but she felt it in the growing coldness of his touch, in the way his eyes never quite met hers anymore. 10 years of marriage dissolving like sugar in hot water, slowly at first, then all at once. Regina slid out of bed, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. The moonlight streaming through the half-drawn curtains cast long shadows across their bedroom, a room that once represented intimacy but now felt like a stage where they both performed the roles of a happily married couple. She hesitated for just a moment before reaching for his phone. One quick swipe, and she'd know for certain. But did she really want confirmation of what her heart already suspected? She pulled her hand back, deciding against it. Not yet. She needed more than just suspicious text messages. Regina had always prided herself on being methodical and analytical, skills that made her an excellent chemistry professor at the university. She would approach this like any scientific investigation: gather evidence, analyze the data, then draw conclusions. The next morning, Regina stood in their kitchen, absently stirring her coffee as she watched Nathan prepare for work. His movements were practiced and efficient as he adjusted his tie, the deep blue one she had given him for their anniversary 3 years ago. "I'll be late tonight," Nathan announced, not looking up from his briefcase as he arranged papers. "The Harrison case is going to trial next week, and we're still finalizing the strategy." "That's the 3rd late night this week," Regina remarked, keeping her voice carefully neutral. Nathan paused momentarily, a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossing his features before his lawyer's composure reasserted itself. "The senior partners are watching this one closely. If we win, it could mean making partner by the end of the year." Partner. The golden carrot he'd been chasing for years. The justification for missed dinners, forgotten anniversaries, and now, possibly, for something far worse. "I understand," she said, though she wasn't sure she did anymore. "Good luck with the preparation." He grabbed his coffee, gave her a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, the kind strangers might exchange, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up." After he left, Regina sat at their dining table, her untouched coffee growing cold. The house felt impossibly empty, filled only with the soft ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from her parents. 10 years, the clock had witnessed. 10 years of laughter, arguments, reconciliations, and now silence. Regina had always been the rational one, the woman who approached life's problems with clear-eyed pragmatism. Even her colleagues at the university often commented on her composure in crisis. But this slow-motion collapse of her marriage, left her feeling uncharacteristically untethered. She pulled out her laptop and opened her calendar, reviewing her own schedule for the day. Morning lecture on organic compounds, department meeting at noon, office hours until 4. Nothing that required her full emotional presence, thankfully. She closed the laptop and finally took a sip of her cold coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. Like so many things lately, it had sat neglected too long. At the university, Regina moved through her day on autopilot. Her lecture was well received. Years of teaching had made her presentations nearly flawless, but her mind continuously circled back to Nathan and his increasingly transparent excuses. During her office hours, while a student struggled through an explanation of molecular bonds, Regina's phone lit up with a notification. An email confirmation for a reservation at the Lakeside Inn, a charming bed and breakfast near their country house. The reservation wasn't in her name, nor Nathan's. It was under N. White business account, The timing aligned perfectly with Nathan's upcoming conference in the same area, a conference he had mentioned only in passing, with suspiciously few details. Their country house was just a 15-minute drive from that inn. "Professor White? Did I lose you?" The student's voice pulled her back to the present. "I'm sorry, James. You were saying about covalent bonds?" Regina forced herself to focus, compartmentalizing her personal concerns, another skill she had mastered over years of balancing career and marriage. That evening, Regina met her longtime friend, Dr. Marcus Fletcher, at a small cafe near the campus. Marcus had been her friend since graduate school, long before she met Nathan. He was one of the few people who knew her before she became half of Regina and Nathan. And sometimes she needed that perspective, desperately. "You look exhausted," Marcus said, in lieu of a greeting, his observant eyes taking in the shadows beneath hers. His sandy hair was windblown, and he still wore the khaki field pants and button-down shirt he used for his research expeditions. As an amphibian biologist, he spent more time in wetlands than in offices. "Charming as ever, Marcus," Regina replied with a tired smile, sliding into the booth across from him. "How are your frogs?" "Toads, actually. The American toads are thriving in the wetland preserve near your country house. I've been tracking their mating patterns for my latest research paper." He paused, studying her face. "But you didn't ask me to coffee to discuss amphibian reproduction." "What's going on, Regina?" She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, drawing comfort from its warmth. "I think Nathan is having an affair." Marcus's expression didn't change. He simply waited for her to continue. "There are late nights, secret phone calls, unexplained weekend trips. Classic signs, I suppose." Regina kept her voice steady, as though discussing an interesting chemical reaction rather than the dissolution of her marriage. "Have you confronted him?" "No, not yet. I need evidence. Something concrete. You know me, Marcus. I don't make accusations without proof." Marcus nodded slowly. "The scientist in you, always needing empirical evidence. Is that so wrong?" Her fingers tightened around the mug. "No, but sometimes human relationships can't be approached like laboratory experiments, Regina." His voice was gentle, lacking judgment. "What will you do if you find this evidence?" The question hung between them. What would she do? Regina had been so focused on confirming her suspicions that she hadn't fully considered the aftermath. Divorce? Counseling? Forgiveness? None of the options appealed to her. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I need to know the truth first." Later that night, Regina returned to an empty house. Nathan had texted that he wouldn't be home until after midnight. She moved through the quiet rooms, turning on lights against the darkness, trying to ignore how accustomed she'd become to his absence. In their home office, she booted up their shared computer. They had always used the same login for household matters: bills, travel arrangements, home maintenance schedules. It felt strange now, this invasion of shared digital space, but she needed to know. She checked their credit card statements first. There it was. Charges from restaurants she'd never visited. A jewelry store purchase on a day he claimed to be working late. Gas station receipts from near their country house on weekends he was supposedly at conferences. Then she found the emails. They were archived rather than deleted. Nathan had always been too confident, too certain of his own cleverness. Messages between him and Sophia Winters, a junior associate at his law firm. The communications started professionally enough, but evolved quickly into something intimate, filled with inside jokes and veiled references. And then she found the plans. An upcoming weekend getaway to their country house, their sanctuary, the place Regina had lovingly decorated with personal touches, where she had planted her garden and spent countless hours creating a retreat from city life. He was taking Sophia there, to their special place. The betrayal felt physical, like a blow to her chest that left her struggling to breathe. Regina sat motionless at the desk, staring at the evidence of her husband's infidelity illuminated on the screen before her. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, the analytical part of her mind, the chemist, the problem solver, began to work on a different kind of solution. Regina picked up her phone and texted Marcus. "I need to talk. It's about those toads you've been studying. I have an idea for an experiment." His response came quickly. "My lab. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. When she finally went to bed, the house remained empty, Nathan still working late. Regina lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a strange calm settling over her. She had always believed in the elegant simplicity of cause and effect. Every action had a reaction. Nathan had made his choice, set events in motion. Now it was her turn to respond. The next morning, Regina arrived at Marcus's laboratory on campus just before 9. The building was quiet. Most students and faculty not yet arrived. She found him in his research space, surrounded by terrariums housing various species of toads and frogs. The humid air smelled of earth and water. "You found proof," Marcus stated as she entered. It wasn't a question. Regina nodded, setting her bag down carefully. "He's taking her to our country house next weekend. Sophia Winters. She's 30 years old, a junior associate at his firm. Pretty, ambitious, everything I was when he married me." She spoke clinically, as though presenting research findings. Marcus leaned against a lab table. "I'm sorry, Regina. I don't want your sympathy, Marcus. I want your expertise." Regina looked pointedly at the terrariums surrounding them. "You mentioned your research on American toads near our country house. Tell me more about that." Marcus raised an eyebrow, confusion crossing his features. "The local population is thriving due to the wetland conservation efforts. They're fascinating creatures, actually. They use chemical signals, pheromones, to attract mates during breeding season." "Motif, pheromones," Regina repeated, her chemistry background immediately engaging with the concept. "Chemical attractants that trigger specific behaviors." "Exactly. In my current research, I've been able to isolate and synthesize these compounds to study their effectiveness in different concentrations." A glimmer of understanding began to show in Marcus's expression. "Regina, what exactly are you thinking?" A small smile played at the corner of her mouth as she looked around at the dozens of toads in their habitats. "I believe, my friend, that Nathan and Sophia deserve a proper welcome to the country. Something natural. Something they'll never forget." Marcus stared at her for a long moment before a slow smile spread across his face. "You know, I've always admired your approach to problem-solving." Regina stepped closer to one of the terrariums, watching a large American toad blink lazily back at her. Sometimes, the most elegant solutions come from nature itself. The laboratory fell silent as Marcus and Regina huddled over his research notes. The quiet hum of equipment and occasional croaking from the terrariums provided a peculiar backdrop to their plotting. "This is the compound," Marcus explained, pointing to a molecular diagram on his computer screen. "It's essentially a synthetic version of the female American toad's mating pheromone, but I've enhanced its potency for my research." He scrolled through charts displaying the results of his experiments. "At this concentration, it creates an almost irresistible attraction for male toads within a quarter-mile radius." Regina studied the chemical structure with professional interest. The compound was elegantly simple, yet remarkably effective. A perfect metaphor for what she intended to accomplish. "And you can produce enough of this to cover a specific area? Say, a bedroom?" Her voice remained steady, almost detached, as though they were discussing an academic experiment rather than a plan for revenge. Marcus nodded slowly. "Technically, yes. I have about 20 ounces synthesized for my research." He hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. "Regina, I understand you're hurt, but are you sure this is what you want to do? There are more conventional ways to handle infidelity." Regina's emerald eyes hardened as she looked up from the screen. "Conventional? Like confronting him, crying, throwing his clothes on the lawn, hiring a divorce attorney immediately?" She shook her head. "Nathan broke something precious, Marcus. Our trust, our home, our sanctuary. before I end this marriage, and I will end it, I want him to understand what it feels like when something sacred is invaded. Marcus studied his oldest friend's face. In the 15 years he'd known Regina, he'd never seen this cold determination in her eyes. The brilliant, measured chemistry professor had always approached personal problems with the same rational analysis she applied to her research. This calculated vengeance represented something new, a fusion of her scientific precision with raw, emotional response. Besides, she continued, her voice softening slightly, we're not going to hurt them. No one's getting injured. Think of it as a vivid learning experience. A ghost of a smile played across her lips. Nathan always said, I should make my lessons more memorable. Marcus let out a long breath. All right, but we're going to plan this carefully. No room for error or unexpected consequences. Over the next 3 days, Regina and Marcus meticulously developed their strategy. Marcus explained that while the pheromone compound would attract the toads, they needed something to ensure a truly dramatic effect. We need a delivery system for maximum impact, Marcus explained as they sat in his office after hours. Something that will disperse the compound at precisely the right moment, when they're most vulnerable. Regina considered this for a moment. What about a timer-controlled humidifier? The country house has high ceilings and gets very dry. I could set one up as a thoughtful addition to the bedroom. Perfect. The aerosolized pheromone would disperse gradually, attracting more and more toads as the night progresses. Marcus made notes in his research journal. But how will you explain the power outage we'll need? Toads are more active in the dark, and we want to maximize the psychological impact. Regina smiled. The electrical system at the country house has always been temperamental. The circuit breaker is easily accessible from outside. One flip of a switch, and they'll be in complete darkness. As they finalized the details, Regina felt an unexpected lightness. For weeks, she had been drowning in suspicion and betrayal, powerless as her marriage crumbled. Now, taking action, even this unorthodox action, restored some sense of control. On Wednesday evening, Regina told Nathan she would be attending a 3-day chemistry education conference in Boston, leaving Friday morning. His poorly concealed relief confirmed what she already knew. He had been waiting for an opportunity to take Sophia to the country house without arousing suspicion. That's great, honey, he said, barely glancing up from his phone. The timing works well, actually. I'll be tied up with the Harrison case all weekend, probably sleeping at the office. The lie slid from his lips with practiced ease, not a single tell betraying his deception. Regina wondered how many times he had lied to her face with this same confident smoothness. You work too hard, she replied, matching his casual tone. Don't forget to eat properly. There are leftovers in the fridge. Nathan looked up, momentarily caught off guard by her concern. For a brief instant, Regina glimpsed something like guilt in his eyes, before the mask slipped back into place. Thanks. I'll try to remember. That night, as Nathan showered, Regina copied his text messages from the cloud backup they shared. Another system he had apparently forgotten existed. The exchanges with Sophia confirmed everything. They would meet Friday afternoon and drive to the country house together. They planned to spend the entire weekend there, returning late Sunday. Can't wait to finally see this famous country house, Sophia had written. A whole weekend alone with you, no interruptions, no excuses about getting home to the wife. Nathan's response made Regina's stomach tighten. Soon, it won't be just visits. Once I make partner and file the papers, we won't need to hide anymore. He was planning to divorce her. The revelation should have devastated Regina, but instead, it crystallized her resolve. The country house, her passion project, the retreat she had lovingly designed down to the smallest detail, would be the setting for her response to his betrayal. Friday morning arrived with perfect autumn weather, crisp, clear, ideal for what lay ahead. Regina packed an overnight bag as though truly leaving for a conference, kissed Nathan goodbye with well-practiced normalcy, and drove away from their suburban home. Instead of heading to Boston, however, she drove directly to the university to meet Marcus. He was waiting in the parking lot of the biology building, loading sealed containers into his SUV. "Everything secured?" Regina asked, transferring her bag from her car to his. Marcus nodded. 20 ounces of synthesized pheromone compound, 3 ultrasonic toad attractors for the garden perimeter, 1 modified humidifier, night vision cameras, and a remote-controlled circuit breaker switch. He closed the trunk. Also packed some coffee and sandwiches. It's going to be a long night of surveillance. The drive to the country house took nearly 2 hours, taking them from the suburbs through increasingly rural landscapes. As they approached the familiar winding road leading to her property, Regina felt a complex mixture of emotions. Nostalgia for the happier times she and Nathan had shared here, anger at his appropriation of their special place for his affair, and a strange, simmering anticipation for what was to come. The country house came into view as they rounded the final curve, a charming 2-story cottage with stone facing and large windows nestled among maple trees now ablaze with autumn colors. The wraparound porch that Regina had insisted on adding during renovations 5 years ago framed the structure perfectly. "It's beautiful," Marcus said quietly, seeing the property for the first time. "You did an amazing job with the restoration." "It was my therapy project after my mother died," Regina replied, memories surfacing of weekends spent stripping old wallpaper, refinishing hardwood floors, and planting the garden that now flourished around the property. Nathan complained about the cost and time, but eventually saw its value. Apparently in more ways than I intended. They parked Marcus's SUV behind the tool shed, where it wouldn't be visible from the driveway. The property's 5 acres afforded plenty of privacy, one of the features that had attracted Regina to it initially. Now that same seclusion would serve a different purpose. Working efficiently, they unloaded their equipment and began implementing their plan. Regina entered the house with her key, immediately feeling the familiar embrace of her weekend sanctuary. The open living area with its stone fireplace, the kitchen with copper pots hanging above the island, the hand-braided rugs covering portions of the wooden floors. "We'll set up the humidifier in the master bedroom," she said, leading Marcus upstairs. The bedroom featured a king-sized bed with an elaborate wooden headboard that Nathan had purchased as a surprise for their anniversary 2 years ago. Regina had been touched by the gesture at the time. Now she wondered if he had already been seeing Sophia then. Marcus carefully placed the modified humidifier on the dresser opposite the bed, filling it with the pheromone solution. "This is set to activate at 10 tonight, gradually releasing the compound into the air." Meanwhile, Regina installed tiny waterproof cameras with night vision capability, borrowed from Marcus's research equipment, in discrete locations around the bedroom and bathroom. "These will transmit to my laptop," Marcus explained as he checked the feeds. "We'll have visual and audio of everything that happens, but from a safe distance." They worked methodically through their checklist, placing ultrasonic toad attractors at strategic points around the property's perimeter. These devices, normally used in Marcus's field research to gather specimens, emitted sounds inaudible to humans but highly attractive to American toads. The combination of sound attractors and pheromones should create quite the gathering, Marcus commented as they planted the final device near the small pond at the edge of the property, a natural habitat already favored by the local amphibian population. By late afternoon, everything was in place. Regina performed one final check of the house, ensuring nothing appeared disturbed or suspicious. In the master bedroom she paused, running her hand over the duvet she had specially ordered from a small textile company in Vermont. So many memories in this room, now about to be overshadowed by tonight's events. "Ready?" Marcus asked from the doorway, respecting her moment of reflection. Regina nodded, her resolve unshaken. "Yes, let's go." They retreated to their surveillance position, a small hunting blind Marcus had set up near the edge of the property, with clear sight lines to both the house and driveway. Inside, they arranged their monitoring equipment: laptop for the camera feeds, remote trigger for the circuit breaker, and high-powered binoculars for visual confirmation of their target's arrival. They didn't have to wait long. At 5:20 in the evening, a black luxury sedan turned into the driveway, gravel crunching under its tires as it approached the house. Through the binoculars, Regina watched as Nathan emerged from the driver's side, looking more relaxed and happy than she had seen him in months. Sophia stepped out from the passenger side, tall and slender with shoulder-length blonde hair, wearing an expensive-looking blazer over designer jeans. Even from a distance, Regina could see why Nathan had been attracted to her. She moved with the confident grace of someone who expected the world to accommodate her desires. "They've arrived," Regina said, her voice remarkably steady. "Right on schedule." Marcus squeezed her shoulder supportively. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, surprising herself with the truth of the statement. There was no jealousy, no urge to rush up to the house and confront them. Just a cool, detached interest in seeing her experiment through to its conclusion. Let's see how their romantic getaway unfolds. Through the camera feeds, they watched as Nathan gave Sophia a tour of the house, pointing out features that Regina had carefully selected and installed. They saw Sophia run her hand appreciatively over the kitchen countertops, peer out at the garden, and exclaim over the clawfoot bathtub in the master bathroom. "This place is gorgeous," Sophia's voice came clearly through the audio feed. "So much better than you described. Why did your wife want a country house anyway? She doesn't strike me as the outdoorsy type." Nathan's laugh carried a hint of derision that made Regina's jaw tighten. Regina likes to think she's connected to nature because she had a rose bush once. This was all about status, having a weekend place to mention to her academic friends. The casual dismissal of her passion for the property stung more than Regina expected. She had spent countless weekends tending the extensive gardens, identifying local bird species, and creating habitats for butterflies. Nathan had apparently never noticed, or worse, had noticed but dismissed her enthusiasm as pretension. "Well, I love it," Sophia declared, wrapping her arms around Nathan's waist as they stood in the living room. "And I have plans for this place when it's ours." She kissed him deeply, and he responded with eager familiarity. Regina turned away from the screen, looking instead at the real-time counter Marcus had set up to track the ultrasonic attractor's effectiveness. Already, dozens of toads were gathering around the perimeter of the property, drawn by the irresistible call. "The ambient temperature is perfect," Marcus noted, checking readings on his tablet. 70s during the day, dropping to high 60s tonight. Ideal activity conditions for Anaxyrus americanus. As darkness fell, Nathan and Sophia prepared dinner in the kitchen, using the expensive ingredients they had brought with them. Opening a bottle of champagne Regina recognized as costing over $300. They toasted to "new beginnings" and "freedom soon," each word another confirmation of Nathan's planned abandonment. After dinner, they moved to the bedroom, exactly as Regina had anticipated. The humidifier had been running for an hour already, silently filling the room with the invisible pheromone compound. 8 o'clock, Marcus said quietly. "The initial concentration should be reaching effective levels now, and our friends are gathering." He indicated the thermal imaging display showing dozens of small heat signatures converging on the house, drawn inexorably by the combination of sound and scent. Regina checked her watch. 2 more hours until peak concentration. Let them get comfortable first. On screen, Nathan and Sophia had moved to the bed, their romantic evening proceeding as expected. Regina found herself emotionally detached from the scene. It was like watching strangers in a house that merely resembled hers. 9:30, Marcus announced eventually. The toad count is over 60 and climbing. They're positioning themselves around all ground-level access points to the house. Regina nodded, finger hovering over the circuit breaker remote. Time to set the stage properly. With a single press of the button, the lights in the country house went out. Darkness enveloped the country house instantly. Through the night vision cameras, Regina and Marcus watched as Nathan and Sophia reacted to the sudden blackout. "What the hell?" Nathan's voice came through the audio feed, irritation evident as he disentangled himself from Sophia's embrace. "Power outages happen occasionally out here, but the timing is terrible." Sophia laughed, the sound tinged with disappointment. "Do you have candles or a flashlight?" "There's a flashlight in the nightstand," Nathan replied. The infrared camera showed him fumbling in the drawer, eventually producing a small LED flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness as he switched it on. "I should check the circuit breaker. It might just be a tripped switch." "Hurry back," Sophia called, as Nathan pulled on his pants and headed for the bedroom door, flashlight in hand. Regina watched Nathan's progress through the house via the strategically placed cameras. When he opened the front door to access the external circuit box, the first wave of their plan was activated. The sudden beam of Nathan's flashlight illuminated several large toads that had gathered on the front porch, their eyes reflecting the light with an eerie glow. Nathan startled, nearly dropping the flashlight. "What the—" Okay. He took a step back, clearly surprised by the unusual gathering of amphibians. After a moment's hesitation, he moved forward again, carefully stepping around the toads to reach the circuit breaker panel mounted on the exterior wall. As Nathan examined the panel, Regina watched the thermal imaging display with growing satisfaction. The pheromone concentration was reaching optimal levels, and more toads were converging on the property with each passing minute. "He's resetting the breaker," Marcus observed, watching the feed from his tablet. Regina nodded. "Wait for it." On screen, Nathan flipped the main switch back and forth, but nothing happened. Regina had remotely locked the circuit in the off position, a feature Marcus had added to their setup. "Something's wrong with the breaker," Nathan muttered to himself, frustration evident in his voice. "I'll have to call an electrician tomorrow." He turned to head back inside, sweeping his flashlight beam across the porch again, revealing even more toads than before. They had multiplied in the brief time he'd been examining the circuit box. "That's weird," Nathan said, carefully picking his way through the amphibian gathering, his discomfort visible even in the infrared footage. Once inside, he secured the door and headed back upstairs to the bedroom. "No luck?" Sophia asked as Nathan returned. "The breaker seems jammed or something," he replied, setting the flashlight on the nightstand so it illuminated the ceiling, creating a dim, ambient light in the room. "We'll have to wait until morning to get it fixed." Sophia sighed dramatically. "So much for our romantic evening with music and mood lighting." "We can improvise," Nathan assured her, returning to the bed. The dark has its own charm. As the couple resumed their intimacy, Regina checked the pheromone density readings on Marcus's tablet. The humidifier had been working for over 2 hours now, saturating the bedroom with the powerful chemical attractant. "Compound concentration is at optimal levels," Marcus confirmed quietly. "The bedroom is essentially a beacon for every male American toad within a quarter-mile radius." On the thermal imaging display, dozens of heat signatures were now moving with purpose toward the house, some hopping directly across the lawn, others emerging from the small pond at the property's edge, all converging on the strongest source of the pheromone, the master bedroom. "The first wave should be entering the house within minutes," Marcus said, checking his tablet. "They're finding entry points through the basement window wells, the small gap under the back door, even the dryer vent." Regina watched silently as the plan unfolded with scientific precision. The cameras showed toads beginning to appear in the downstairs areas of the house, first 1 or 2 in the kitchen, then several more in the living room, steadily making their way toward the stairs, drawn by the irresistible chemical call from above. "Nathan!" Sophia's voice suddenly came through the audio feed, a note of confusion in her tone. "Do you hear that?" The distinctive sound of toads croaking had grown loud enough to be noticeable even over their own conversation. "Hear what?" Nathan asked, pausing. "That noise, like croaking?" Nathan fell silent, listening. The chorus of toads was growing steadily louder as more amphibians joined the procession toward the bedroom. "It's just frogs from the pond," Nathan dismissed, though his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. "They get active at night, especially when it's warm like tonight." "It sounds like they're getting closer," Sophia insisted, a thread of unease entering her voice. Nathan laughed, though the sound lacked conviction. "Don't tell me you're afraid of a few frogs." "I'm not afraid," Sophia protested. "It's just strange." Their conversation was interrupted by a distinct thump from somewhere in the house, followed by another. Through the cameras, Regina and Marcus could see the vanguard of toads had reached the staircase and were making their determined way upward, one hop at a time. "What was that?" Sophia asked, sitting up in bed. Nathan reached for the flashlight. "Probably just the house settling. These old places make all kinds of noises." He directed the beam toward the bedroom door, which Regina had deliberately left slightly ajar during her preparations. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a medium-sized toad hopped into view at the threshold, pausing as though surveying the room. Sophia gasped. "Nathan, there's a frog in the doorway." "It's a toad, actually," Nathan corrected automatically, swinging the flashlight beam to illuminate the amphibian. "Must have gotten in somehow. I'll get rid of it." As Nathan moved to stand, 2 more toads appeared behind the first. Then another 3. Within seconds, the doorway was filling with toads of various sizes, all oriented toward the bed, or more specifically, toward Sophia, who was now clutching the sheets to her chest, her earlier bravado evaporating. "Nathan, there are more of them," she whispered, alarm rising in her voice. "Why are there so many?" Nathan stood frozen, flashlight beam revealing the growing assembly of amphibians. This isn't normal." "Me too." The toads began to advance into the room, their movements purposeful, headed directly for the bed. Specifically, they seemed drawn to Sophia, who had unknowingly positioned herself on the side of the bed, where Regina had applied the highest concentration of pheromone solution to the sheets. "They're coming this way!" Sophia's voice rose in pitch as she scrambled back against the headboard. "Why are they coming toward me?" Nathan stepped between the advancing toads and the bed, attempting to shoo them away with a pillow. "Go on, get out of here." His efforts proved futile as more toads continued to pour through the doorway. Some began to circumnavigate him, heading single-mindedly toward Sophia. Others, sensing the pheromone on Nathan's feet and legs from the bed, began climbing onto his bare feet. "What the hell?" Nathan jumped back, shaking a toad from his foot. "There's something wrong with these toads." Sophia was now standing on the bed, backed against the wall, her expression one of escalating panic as toads continued to flow into the room. "Do something! Get them out!" Nathan grabbed his phone from the nightstand, activating its flashlight function for additional illumination. The stronger light revealed the true scale of the invasion. Dozens of toads now covered the bedroom floor, with more visible in the hallway. Their collective croaking created an overwhelming chorus that filled the room. "I'm calling animal control," Nathan declared, though his trembling hands betrayed his own mounting fear. "There's no cell service here, remember?" Sophia cried, her voice cracking. "You said it was part of the charm, being disconnected." Regina smiled faintly at this revelation. Nathan had apparently forgotten to mention the signal booster she had installed last year precisely because she hated being disconnected. "The landline," Nathan remembered suddenly. "There's a landline in the kitchen. You're leaving me here with them?" Sophia's voice rose to a near shriek. "Just stay on the bed," Nathan instructed, grabbing his pants from the floor, having to shake off 2 toads that had climbed onto the fabric. "I'll call for help and find something to clear them out." Nathan navigated through the amphibian invasion with obvious disgust, using the flashlight to find a path through the toads now carpeting the bedroom floor. He made his way into the hallway, his progress visible through the sequence of cameras Regina had installed. As he descended the stairs, the extent of the situation became clear. Toads covered nearly every surface of the first floor as well. The kitchen counters, the dining table, the sofa, all hosted clusters of the determined amphibians. "This is impossible," Nathan muttered. His earlier confidence completely evaporated as he picked his way through the living room. When he reached the landline in the kitchen, he lifted the receiver only to find it dead. Another detail of Regina's meticulous planning. Meanwhile, back in the bedroom, Sophia's situation was deteriorating rapidly. The toads, drawn by the concentrated pheromone on her side of the bed, had begun to scale the bed frame and mattress. The night vision camera captured her mounting hysteria as she batted desperately at the approaching amphibians. "They're climbing onto the bed," she screamed, loud enough for Nathan to hear downstairs. "Nathan, help me!" Nathan abandoned the useless phone and grabbed a broom from the kitchen closet, rushing back upstairs as quickly as the toad-covered steps would allow. He burst back into the bedroom to find Sophia standing on the bed's headboard, practically pressed against the wall as toads advanced across the mattress toward her. "Get them off!" she sobbed, beyond composure now. "Why are they coming after me specifically?" It was true. While the toads were everywhere in the room, they showed a marked preference for Sophia's position, oriented toward her like compass needles to magnetic north. Nathan began sweeping toads off the bed with the broom, but for each one he displaced, 2 more seemed to take its place. "We need to get out of here," he decided, his voice shaking. "We'll take the car and drive somewhere with cell service." "How?" Sophia cried. "They're everywhere. I can't even get down." "I'll clear a path," Nathan insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Just stay calm." In the surveillance blind, Regina watched the unfolding chaos with a sense of cold satisfaction. Beside her, Marcus monitored the readings on his equipment, making notes in his research journal. "The concentration gradient is working perfectly," he observed quietly. "The primary application point, Sophia's side of the bed, is attracting the highest density of specimens, with secondary concentrations around the bedroom in general." Regina nodded. "The distribution is exactly as we projected." And Nathan's reaction? Classic fight-or-flight response transitioning to problem-solving under stress, though with diminishing effectiveness, Marcus analyzed, his scientific detachment matching Regina's own. Sophia appears to have bypassed rational response entirely and moved directly to panic. On screen, Nathan was attempting to create a safe route for Sophia to leave the bed, using the broom to clear toads from a small area of the floor. His efforts were largely futile, as the amphibians immediately hopped back into the cleared space, drawn by the pheromone. "I can't do this," Sophia sobbed, mascara streaking down her face. "This isn't natural. It's like they're targeting me." A particularly large toad made an impressive leap from the floor directly onto the bed, landing near Sophia's foot. Her scream reached a new pitch as she kicked reflexively, sending the amphibian flying across the room, only for it to immediately turn and begin hopping back toward her. "Nathan, that one's coming back," she shrieked, pointing at the determined toad. "It's like it's possessed." Nathan's composure was visibly crumbling as he realized the futility of his efforts. Toads continued to stream into the room, their numbers seemingly endless. Some had even begun to ascend the walls, using the textured surface of the rustic wallpaper Regina had carefully selected during renovations. "We have to make a run for it," Nathan decided, moving to the bed and reaching for Sophia. "I'll carry you if I have to. We just need to get to the car." Sophia was beyond rational thought, her phobia of the amphibians now in full control. "I can't touch them. I can't walk through them." "It's the only way out," Nathan insisted, desperation evident in his voice. As they argued, a new development emerged. The largest concentration of toads had now gathered directly beneath Sophia's side of the bed, creating an amphibian mountain of sorts. As Regina and Marcus watched through the cameras, this mass began to function almost as a single entity, rising higher as toads climbed over one another, reaching ever closer to the terrified woman. "The swarm behavior is fascinating," Marcus murmured, making additional notes. "I've never documented anything like this in the wild." The synthetic pheromone seems to override their normal individualistic behaviors. The moment of crisis came when the living tower of toads finally reached the mattress level, and the creatures began to pour onto the bed in a steady stream. Sophia's terror reached its peak. "They're on the bed! They're coming for me!" she screamed, losing her balance on the headboard and falling forward onto the mattress. The moment she landed, several toads immediately hopped onto her bare legs. Sophia's scream transcended ordinary human vocal range. With a strength born of pure panic, she launched herself from the bed, directly into Nathan, nearly knocking him over. Toads scattered in her wake as she bolted for the door, heedless of the amphibians covering the floor. "Sophia, wait!" Nathan called, but she was beyond hearing, driven by primal fear. Regina and Marcus watched as Sophia fled through the house, slipping and sliding on toads, screaming continuously as she made her desperate escape. Nathan followed, calling after her, struggling to navigate the amphibian obstacle course while maintaining his dignity. A losing battle. When Sophia reached the front door, she flung it open, revealing dozens more toads waiting on the porch. Without hesitation, she leaped over them and ran toward the car, her earlier concern for designer clothing completely forgotten as she splashed through the dew-covered grass in her state of partial undress. Nathan emerged moments later, having taken time to grab his car keys and phone. He rushed to the vehicle where Sophia was already pulling frantically at the locked passenger door. "Open it! Open it now!" she demanded, constantly looking over her shoulder at the house now silhouetted against the night sky. A house that, to her terror-stricken mind, seemed to be exuding toads from every window and door. As Nathan unlocked the car, Regina pressed the button on the remote to restore power to the house. Lights blazed on suddenly, illuminating the extraordinary scene. Hundreds of toads covering the porch, lawn, and driveway, all converging on the country house. The unexpected return of power seemed to further unnerve the fleeing couple. Nathan fumbled with his keys, dropping them twice before managing to start the car. The headlights revealed even more toads on the driveway ahead, creating an amphibian gauntlet they would need to navigate to escape. "Drive!" Sophia shrieked, heedless of the creatures that would be crushed under the tires. "Just drive!" As the car lurched forward, Regina and Marcus watched from their hidden position, the headlights briefly illuminating portions of the lawn before the vehicle disappeared down the long driveway, gravel spraying in its wake. For a moment, the surveillance blind was silent except for the soft electronic hum of their equipment. Then Regina turned to Marcus, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I believe the experiment was a success," she said quietly. Marcus nodded, still making notes on his tablet. "Absolutely. The behavioral response exceeded our projections." He looked up at Regina, concern returning to his features. "Are you okay?" Regina considered the question carefully. The cold satisfaction of revenge had delivered exactly what she'd hoped for. A moment of justice, of balance, restored. Yet beneath that satisfaction lay a deeper emotion, a profound sadness for the death of something once beautiful. "I'm not okay," she admitted finally, "but I will be." The quiet hum of Marcus's SUV filled the pre-dawn silence as they drove back toward the city. Regina sat in the passenger seat, watching the rural landscape transition to suburbs through the window, her expression contemplative. The evening's events played through her mind like scenes from someone else's life, dramatic, surreal, yet undeniably satisfying. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, glancing briefly from the road. Regina continued gazing out the window. "I'm thinking about chemical reactions. How, when you combine certain elements, the transformation is irreversible. You can never return to the original components." Marcus nodded, understanding the metaphor. "And your marriage? An irreversible reaction," she said softly. "Even without the toads, we could never go back to what we were." Nathan made sure of that long before tonight. After leaving the country house, they had spent several hours meticulously removing all evidence of their involvement. The cameras, the modified humidifier, the ultrasonic attractors, everything was carefully packed away in Marcus's vehicle. The only thing they left behind was the lingering pheromone compound, which would continue attracting toads to the property for at least another day before degrading naturally. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked as they approached the city limits, the first rays of morning sun illuminating the skyline ahead. Regina had spent most of the night considering exactly this question. "I'm going to file for divorce," she replied with quiet certainty. "But first, I'll play along with Nathan's lies a little longer. I'm curious to see how he explains last night's adventure. You don't think he'll suspect you were involved?" She smiled faintly. "A massive amphibian invasion orchestrated by his chemistry professor wife? It would require him to acknowledge I'm capable of something that impressive. Nathan's never given me that much credit." Marcus chuckled, then grew serious again. "And the country house? That stays with me. Non-negotiable." Her tone left no room for discussion on this point. "It was mine before it became ours. The renovation was my project, my healing after Mom died. Nathan merely tolerated it until he decided it could be useful for his affair." They reached Regina's neighborhood as the Sunday morning silence was just beginning to give way to the earliest stirrings of suburban life. A jogger here, a dog walker there. Marcus pulled up a block away from her house, as they had agreed. "Thank you," Regina said, turning to face him fully. "Not just for the toads and the technical expertise, but for being the one person who didn't tell me to talk it out or try harder to save my marriage." Marcus met her gaze, his expression serious. "You deserved better than lies, Regina. And for what it's worth, I think what comes next for you will be better than what you're leaving behind." She gathered her overnight bag and stepped out of the vehicle. Before closing the door, she leaned back in. "I'll call you later. I expect Nathan will have quite a story to tell when he finally comes home." Regina walked the short distance to her house, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. The stillness of the empty home felt different now. Not lonely, but peaceful. She made herself a cup of coffee and settled at the kitchen island, opening her laptop to continue the paper she'd been working on before her life had been upended by Nathan's betrayal. Hours passed as Regina immersed herself in her research, the familiar rhythm of academic work providing a comforting normalcy. It was nearly 2 in the afternoon when she heard a car pull into the driveway. She closed her laptop and composed her features into an expression of casual welcome as the front door opened. Nathan entered, looking disheveled and exhausted, his designer clothes wrinkled and stained. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his carefully maintained hair was in disarray. He froze momentarily when he saw Regina sitting calmly at the kitchen island. "You're home early," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "How was the conference?" "It was cancelled," Regina replied smoothly. "Water damage at the venue from a burst pipe. I drove back late last night." Nathan's expression cycled rapidly through several emotions: shock, alarm, calculation, and finally settling on a carefully constructed casualness. "You should have called. I would have come home. You said you'd be sleeping at the office, working on the Harrison case," she reminded him, watching his face closely. "I didn't want to disturb you." "Right." Nathan set down his keys, buying time. "The case. It's going well, actually. We had a breakthrough last night." The lie came as easily as breathing to him, Regina noted. Even now, caught in circumstances that should make deception impossible, he defaulted to fiction without hesitation. "You look exhausted," she observed, allowing concern to color her voice. "And what happened to your clothes? There's mud all over your pants." Nathan glanced down as though noticing the state of his attire for the first time. "Oh, this? There was a plumbing issue at the office. A pipe burst in the bathroom. Several of us had to help with the cleanup until maintenance arrived." "A pipe burst at your office," Regina repeated, keeping her expression neutral. "What a coincidence. Just like at my conference venue." Something flickered in Nathan's eyes, a momentary uncertainty, quickly suppressed. These old buildings, Their infrastructure is always failing. He moved toward the stairs. I need a shower and clean clothes. Of course, Regina replied pleasantly. I'll make you some coffee for when you're done. As Nathan disappeared upstairs, Regina allowed herself a small smile. She had expected lies, but the sheer audacity of his fabrications surprised even her. A plumbing emergency that perfectly explained his disheveled state, yet conveniently occurred at his workplace while she was away. She prepared coffee as promised, arranging cups on the kitchen island. When Nathan returned 20 minutes later, freshly showered and wearing clean clothes, he appeared to have regained some of his composure. You mentioned a pipe burst at your conference too? He asked, accepting the coffee she offered. Regina nodded. A real mess. The entire main hall was flooded. The organizers had no choice but to cancel. She paused, watching him over the rim of her cup. How strange that we both experienced plumbing disasters on the same weekend. Strange indeed, Nathan agreed, his lawyer's poise fully restored. He took a careful sip of coffee, then set the cup down. Actually, that wasn't the only strange thing that happened last night. Regina raised an eyebrow, feigning curiosity. Oh? After dealing with the plumbing issue, I decided to drive out to the country house. Nathan began, his tone casual but eyes watchful. I thought since you were away at the conference, I could get some quiet time to work on the case notes. That was a good idea, Regina encouraged. Did you manage to get any work done? Nathan hesitated, clearly gauging how much to reveal. Not exactly. There was a situation. What kind of situation? This is going to sound crazy, he prefaced. But the house was completely overrun with toads. Hundreds of them, everywhere. Inside, outside, covering the floors, the furniture, everywhere. Regina widened her eyes in a show of disbelief. Toads? Inside our house? How is that possible? I have no idea, Nathan said, shaking his head. It was like something out of a horror movie. I couldn't even stay there. Had to drive back to the city and get a hotel room. He leaned forward, earnestness in his expression. We'll need to call pest control immediately. The place is uninhabitable. That's terrible, Regina replied, matching his serious tone. But also, rather unbelievable. Hundreds of toads don't just invade a house without reason. I know how it sounds, Nathan insisted, but I'm telling you, it was a complete invasion. I've never seen anything like it. Regina took a thoughtful sip of her coffee. I should drive out there today to assess the damage. No! Nathan's response came too quickly, too forcefully. He modulated his tone with visible effort. I mean, it's not safe. You shouldn't have to deal with that. I'll handle everything. That's sweet of you, Regina said. But it's my house, too. I should see this toad invasion for myself. Nathan's composure slipped momentarily. Regina, seriously, it's disgusting. Let me call professionals to deal with it first. I'm not squeamish about toads, Nathan. I'm a chemistry professor, remember? I've handled all sorts of unpleasant specimens over the years. She stood, decision apparently made. Besides, I'm curious about what could cause such an unusual natural phenomenon. Panic flashed across Nathan's features as his carefully constructed narrative began to crumble. The roads are bad out there from the rain, he tried. And the power was out last night. Might still be out. I'll bring flashlights, Regina countered easily. And my car handles rough roads just fine. She paused, studying his increasingly desperate expression. Unless there's some other reason you don't want me to go to the country house today? Nathan stood abruptly, abandoning pretense. Fine. I wasn't alone last night. What do you mean? Regina asked, her voice carefully neutral despite the savage satisfaction unfurling inside her. I was with someone. A colleague. Nathan's words tumbled out, his need to control the narrative overwhelming his earlier caution. It was a one-time thing. A mistake. We went to the country house because I thought it would be safe. You were supposed to be at a conference all weekend. Regina let the silence stretch between them, watching him squirm. A colleague, she repeated finally. Would this colleague happen to be Sophia Winters from your firm? Nathan paled visibly. How did you know her name? Regina finished for him. Or know that your relationship has been going on for months? Or that you've been planning to divorce me after you make partner? She smiled thinly. I'm observant, Nathan. More observant than you've ever given me credit for. For once in his life, Nathan White seemed completely at a loss for words. His mouth opened and closed several times before he managed to speak. Regina, I can explain. No need, she interrupted, her voice steel beneath silk. I understand perfectly. What I don't understand is why you felt the need to make up this elaborate story about a toad invasion. Nathan stared at her, confusion replacing his panic. I didn't make that up. The toads were real. The most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. Sophia was hysterical. They seemed to be targeting her specifically. Regina allowed her expression to shift to one of concern. Nathan, are you feeling all right? First a fictional plumbing emergency, now a biblical plague of toads? Perhaps you should lie down. I'm not making this up, Nathan insisted, frustration breaking through. Ask Sophia if you don't believe me. She's probably still traumatized. I'd rather not involve your mistress in our conversation, Regina replied coldly. But I am curious. If this toad invasion really happened, why didn't you call me? Or animal control? Or anyone who could help? There was no cell service, Nathan explained desperately. And the landline was dead. We were completely cut off. Regina raised an eyebrow. That's strange. I had the signal booster installed last year specifically because you complained about the poor reception. And I paid the phone bill just last week. She reached for her own phone. Let me call the house line now to check if it's working. Before Nathan could respond, she dialed the country house landline. The ringing was audible through her phone's speaker. After 4 rings, the answering machine picked up with Regina's recorded greeting. How odd, she said, ending the call. Everything seems to be working fine now. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, visibly struggling to make sense of the situation. I don't understand. Last night nothing worked. The power was out, the phones were dead, and those toads were everywhere. Perhaps it was some kind of hallucination, Regina suggested with false sympathy. Were you and Sophia drinking? The expensive champagne from the top shelf of our wine rack, perhaps? The one you bought for our anniversary? Nathan's head snapped up, guilt flashing across his features. How did you know about the champagne? Regina shook her head slowly. Nathan, I've known about your affair for weeks. The late nights, the secret texts, the unexplained charges on our credit card. Why didn't you say anything? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Regina regarded him coolly. I was gathering evidence. The scientist in me needed to be thorough before drawing conclusions. She reached into her bag and produced a manila envelope, sliding it across the kitchen island toward him. Which brings me to this. Nathan stared at the envelope without touching it. What is it? Divorce papers, Regina replied simply. My attorney prepared them last week. All they need is your signature. You've already consulted a lawyer? Nathan seemed genuinely shocked, his careful world of deception collapsing around him. As I said, I'm more observant and proactive than you've given me credit for. She tapped the envelope. Everything is fairly standard. The house in the city will be sold, and the proceeds divided. My retirement accounts remain mine. Yours remain yours, and the country house stays with me. Non-negotiable. Nathan's expression hardened, the initial shock giving way to calculation. And if I don't agree to these terms, then things become much less amicable, Regina replied evenly. My lawyer has prepared a second set of papers detailing your affair with a junior associate at your firm, a clear violation of your company's ethics policy. I believe the partners who are considering you for promotion would find it very interesting reading. The color drained from Nathan's face. You wouldn't. I would, Regina confirmed, her voice steady. But I'd prefer not to. This can be simple, Nathan. Sign the papers. Go be with Sophia, if that's what you want. and we'll both move on with our lives." Nathan stared at her, as though seeing her for the first time. "I never thought you'd be so calculating." "No," Regina agreed. "You never really thought about me much at all, did you?" She pushed the envelope closer to him. "Take some time to review the papers with your own attorney if you wish. You have until the end of the week to sign." She stood, gathering her phone and laptop. "I'm going to the university to work for a few hours. When I return, I expect we can discuss this rationally." She paused at the doorway to the hall. "Oh, and Nathan, I would suggest not returning to the country house anytime soon. Those toads might still be waiting." The flash of genuine fear in his eyes was the final confirmation Regina needed. The night's events had affected him precisely as she'd intended. Without waiting for his response, she collected her car keys and left the house, the satisfaction of reclaiming her power warming her like the afternoon sun. During the drive to the university, Regina's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How did he explain the amphibian invasion? Regina smiled as she dictated her response at the next red light. Exactly as we predicted. First denied everything, then admitted the affair, but insisted the toads were real. He's completely rattled. Marcus's reply came quickly. Operation Frog Prince successful. What's your next move? Regina considered the question as she pulled into the faculty parking lot. The answer came with perfect clarity. Moving forward. On my terms this time. Inside her office, Regina settled at her desk and opened her laptop. Instead of returning to her research paper, however, she navigated to the university's doctoral program application portal. The page for the Environmental Chemistry PhD program, the advanced degree she had deferred years ago when Nathan convinced her to focus on building their life together, welcomed her with possibilities. The application deadline was still 2 weeks away. More than enough time. As Regina began filling in the personal information fields, a new text from Marcus appeared on her phone. Just check the country house remotely. The toads are dispersing naturally as the pheromone degrades. By tomorrow, everything will look normal. No evidence of our experiment remains. Regina smiled as she typed her response. Perfect. Thank you again for your expertise. Dinner this week to celebrate? His reply was immediate. Absolutely. Name the place and time. Proud of you, Regina. She set her phone aside and returned to the application, feeling lighter than she had in months. The scientific part of her recognized the phenomenon. When toxic elements are removed from a system, equilibrium can be restored. Her marriage had become that toxic element, disrupting her natural state. With Nathan's lies exposed and the divorce in motion, balance was returning. Regina worked steadily through the afternoon, completing most of the application and drafting a compelling personal statement about her research interests in environmental chemistry, particularly the study of chemical compounds that affect natural behaviors in ecosystems. Her recent experiment had given her some fascinating insights that could form the foundation of her doctoral research. By early evening, Regina felt satisfied with her progress. She packed up her materials and headed back to her car, preparing herself for the uncomfortable conversation that awaited her at home. Nathan would likely have regrouped by now, his lawyer's instincts kicking in with counteroffers or threats. But Regina felt prepared for whatever tactics he might employ. As she drove, her mind drifted to the country house, her sanctuary, soon to be truly hers alone again. She imagined spending weekends there as she had before, gardening, reading, and perhaps now setting up a small research station for her doctoral studies. The invasion of toads would fade into memory, but the property would be cleansed of Nathan's betrayal, reclaimed as her personal refuge. Regina pulled into her driveway just as dusk was settling over the neighborhood. The lights were on in the house, but Nathan's car was gone. When she entered, she found a note on the kitchen island, his handwriting precise and controlled. Regina, I'm staying at a hotel tonight to give us both space. I've taken the divorce papers to review with my attorney. We'll talk tomorrow. Nathan. She read the note twice, then set it aside without emotion. This was the Nathan she knew, retreating to regroup when confronted, buying time to formulate a strategy. It was the behavior that had made him successful in the courtroom, but had ultimately poisoned their marriage. Everything was a case to be won, everyone an opponent to be outmaneuvered. Regina made herself a simple dinner and ate in peaceful solitude, enjoying the quiet of the house. Afterward, she poured a glass of wine and called Marcus. "He's taken the papers to his lawyer," she reported when he answered. "And he's staying at a hotel tonight." "Running away from the confrontation," Marcus observed. "Typical." "He'll try to negotiate better terms," Regina predicted. "But I have leverage he can't overcome." They discussed the situation for a while longer, then shifted to more pleasant topics: Marcus's research, Regina's doctoral application, a new exhibit at the Natural History Museum they both wanted to see. "How about Saturday?" Marcus suggested. "We could see the exhibit and have dinner after." Regina found herself smiling. Saturday sounds perfect. After they hung up, Regina carried her wine to the living room and settled on the sofa. On the coffee table lay a framed photograph of her and Nathan on their honeymoon in Hawaii, both smiling broadly at the camera. She studied it dispassionately, trying to reconcile those hopeful young faces with the strangers they had become to each other. With deliberate care, Regina placed the frame face down on the table. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and practical matters, division of property, notifications to friends and family, the 1,000 small separations that accompanied a divorce. But tonight, in the quiet of her soon-to-be-hers alone home, Regina felt only a profound sense of liberation. Her phone buzzed with a text notification. She expected Marcus again, but instead found a message from Sophia Winters. "I know you set up the toads somehow. I don't know how, but I know it was you. Stay away from me." Regina stared at the text, momentarily startled by this direct communication from Nathan's mistress. Then she began to laugh, a genuine liberating sound that filled the empty house. The sheer audacity of the woman who had been sleeping with her husband, warning her to stay away. She considered various responses, from denial to threats, but ultimately settled on something simpler. She deleted the message without replying and blocked the number. Some reactions, Regina decided, didn't require a catalyst at all. 6 months could change everything. Regina White stood at the large bay window of her university office, watching autumn leaves dance across the campus quad, reflecting on this truth. Half a year had transformed her life so completely that sometimes she barely recognized the woman she had been before, the woman who had diminished herself to fit within the narrow confines of Nathan's expectations. The divorce had been finalized 4 months ago, proceeding with surprising efficiency once Nathan realized the futility of fighting her terms. His initial bravado had crumbled quickly when faced with Regina's meticulously gathered evidence and unwavering resolve. In the end, he had signed the papers without further negotiation, the country house and her full retirement accounts remaining untouched. The last time Regina had seen Nathan was at their final meeting with the attorneys. He had aged visibly during the proceedings, stress etching new lines around his eyes. Sophia hadn't lasted long after the toad incident, apparently unable to overcome her newfound association between Nathan and amphibians. According to mutual acquaintances, she had transferred to their firm's office in Chicago, putting considerable distance between herself and both Nathan and Regina. "Dr. White?" A tentative knock accompanied the voice at her office door. Regina turned from the window, smiling at the graduate student hovering in the doorway. "Come in, Amber. And it's still just Professor White until I defend my dissertation next spring." Amber entered, clutching a folder of lab results. "The initial tests on the environmental pheromone degradation are complete. The results are, well, they're remarkable." Regina gestured to the chair opposite her desk. "Show me." As Amber spread the data sheets across the desk, Regina felt a familiar thrill of scientific discovery. Her doctoral research was progressing faster than anyone had anticipated, her years of teaching experience and focused determination accelerating her through the program at a pace that had impressed even the most skeptical faculty members. The project, studying how synthetic pheromones affected aquatic ecosystems and their degradation patterns over time, had been inspired directly by her experiment with Nathan and Sophia. Of course, that particular application remained her closely guarded secret, shared only with Marcus. Marcus. Regina's thoughts drifted to him as she reviewed Amber's findings. Their relationship had evolved gradually over the past months, transitioning from friendship to something deeper with a natural ease that still surprised her. Unlike her relationship with Nathan, built on compromise and concession, what she shared with Marcus was founded on mutual respect and genuine understanding. This concentration curve is particularly interesting, Regina noted, pointing to one of Amber's graphs. The degradation rate accelerates after the 48-hour mark. We should design additional tests to understand why. After discussing the results and planning the next phase of experiments, Regina dismissed Amber with congratulations on her thorough work. She gathered her materials for her afternoon lecture, pleased with how seamlessly her doctoral studies had integrated with her continued teaching responsibilities. The chemistry department had been surprisingly accommodating of her dual role as professor and PhD candidate, particularly after her first paper on environmental pheromones had been accepted by a prestigious journal. Her professional standing, which she had feared might suffer during the divorce, had instead strengthened significantly. As Regina crossed the campus toward the lecture hall, her phone vibrated with an incoming call from Dr. Eleanor Wright, her doctoral advisor and longtime mentor. "Regina!" Eleanor's voice crackled with excitement when she answered. "I just heard from the committee. Your grant proposal for the wetland pheromone study has been approved. Full funding for 2 years." Regina stopped walking, absorbing the news. The grant would allow her to expand her research significantly, perhaps even establish a dedicated laboratory facility. "That's wonderful news, Eleanor. Thank you for letting me know right away." "You've earned it," Eleanor replied warmly. "Your proposal was impeccable, and your preliminary results are already generating buzz in the department. The committee was particularly impressed by your innovative approach to studying ecosystem disruptions." Titi. After thanking Eleanor again and promising to celebrate the news later, Regina continued to her lecture, a newfound energy in her step. The grant represented more than just research funding. It was validation of her scientific vision, her academic independence. The lecture hall was nearly full when she arrived, students settling into their seats for her popular environmental chemistry course. Regina had always been a competent teacher, but in recent months her colleagues had noted a transformation in her classroom presence. She taught now with a passionate authority that captivated her students, her lectures weaving complex chemical concepts into relatable real-world applications. "Today, we'll be discussing chemical signals in natural systems," she began, surveying the attentive faces before her. "How invisible compounds can trigger profound behavioral changes, and the delicate balance that maintains ecosystem harmony." For the next hour, Regina guided her students through the fascinating world of chemical communication in nature, from pheromones that triggered mating behaviors to alarm signals that warned of predators. She found herself enjoying the lecture more than usual, perhaps because the topic so perfectly mirrored her own journey of transformation. After class, as the students filed out, Regina noticed Marcus waiting by the door, a bouquet of wildflowers in hand. She felt a warm flush of pleasure at his unexpected appearance. "Surprise inspection?" she asked, as she approached him, gesturing to the emptying classroom. "Just admiring the professor in her natural habitat," he replied with a grin, presenting the flowers, "and delivering congratulations on your grant approval. Eleanor called me right after she spoke with you." Regina accepted the bouquet, inhaling the subtle fragrance. Unlike the ostentatious roses Nathan had occasionally brought home, always after an argument or particularly lengthy absence, Marcus chose wildflowers that reflected her love of natural systems. "Thank you. I was going to call you later with the news." "I couldn't wait," he admitted. This grant is a big deal, Regina. It validates everything you've been working toward. They walked together through the campus, discussing the implications of the grant funding and Regina's plans for expanding her research. The easy rhythm of their conversation highlighted another stark difference from her marriage. With Marcus, she never needed to simplify her work or downplay her achievements. "Are we still on for the country house this weekend?" Marcus asked, as they reached the faculty parking lot. "I've collected some fascinating specimens from the pond that I'd like to show you. They might be relevant to your grant research." "Absolutely," Regina confirmed. "I've been looking forward to it all week." The country house had become their shared retreat over the past months, though Marcus maintained his own apartment in the city. The property that had once been tainted by Nathan's betrayal had been reclaimed and renewed under Regina's care, transformed into a place of both peaceful solitude and scientific discovery. After saying goodbye to Marcus with a brief kiss, Regina drove home to her new apartment, a modern space near the university that she had purchased with her portion of the proceeds from selling the suburban house she had shared with Nathan. The apartment reflected her tastes completely. Clean lines, abundant natural light, and bookshelves filled with scientific texts and literary classics. That evening, as Regina packed for the weekend, she reflected on how thoroughly she had rebuilt her life in just 6 months. The divorce, while painful, had been merely the beginning of her transformation, the catalyst for a series of changes that had aligned her external circumstances with her true self. She had feared loneliness after 10 years of marriage, but instead discovered a rich tapestry of connections, with colleagues who respected her intellect, with students inspired by her teaching, with Marcus who appreciated her exactly as she was, and most importantly, with herself. The following afternoon, Regina drove the familiar route to the country house, autumn colors painting the landscape in brilliant hues of red and gold. The property came into view as she rounded the final curve, the stone cottage nestled among maple trees, the garden now prepared for winter dormancy, the small pond reflecting the crisp blue sky. Regina parked beside Marcus's SUV in the driveway. He had arrived earlier to set up his research equipment and was waiting on the porch, a steaming mug in each hand. "Perfect timing," he called as she climbed the steps. "I just made coffee." "Seat." They spent the afternoon by the pond, where Marcus had established a small observation station for studying the local amphibian population. Regina listened with genuine interest as he explained his latest findings on habitat adaptation, occasionally connecting his observations to her own research on environmental chemical interactions. "The American toads have been especially active this season," Marcus noted, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Though nothing like the unprecedented gathering we documented 6 months ago." Regina smiled at the reference to their shared secret. That was a singular event, unlikely to be repeated, unless someone were to synthesize another batch of enhanced pheromone compound, Marcus suggested innocently. "Purely hypothetical, of course," Regina replied, matching his tone. "Such an experiment would never be conducted outside proper laboratory conditions by responsible scientists." They shared a knowing look before returning to their work, the comfortable silence between them punctuated only by the occasional notes they dictated into their respective recording devices. As evening approached, they retreated to the house. Regina prepared dinner while Marcus built a fire in the stone fireplace. The domestic rhythm they had established felt natural, unforced, a partnership of equals sharing space and interests without surrendering individual identity. Over dinner, Regina shared news of her grant approval, and they discussed potential applications for the funding. The conversation flowed easily from scientific topics to personal reflections, their intellectual connection as strong as their emotional one. "I received an interesting email today," Marcus mentioned as they cleared the dinner dishes. "The International Amphibian Conservation Conference is being held in New Zealand next spring. They've invited me to present my research on habitat restoration techniques." "That's wonderful," Regina replied sincerely. "Your work deserves international recognition." Marcus hesitated, then added, "The invitation includes a guest. I was hoping you might consider joining me. We could extend the trip, explore some of New Zealand's unique ecosystems." Regina paused, surprised by the unexpected invitation. Travel with Marcus would represent another significant step in their relationship, a public acknowledgement of their partnership beyond their close circle of friends and colleagues. "I'd love to," she said after a moment's consideration. "My dissertation defense should be completed by then, and the first phase of the grant research well established." Marcus's smile conveyed his pleasure at her acceptance. "Perfect. It's settled then. New Zealand in April." Later, as they sat before the fire with glasses of wine, Regina found herself contemplating how differently her life had unfolded from what she had once envisioned. The conventional path she had followed with Nathan, marriage, suburban home, faculty position, had seemed secure, but had ultimately constricted her true potential. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Chemical reactions," Regina replied with a small smile, echoing her words from months earlier. "How sometimes they need a catalyst to reach their optimal state." Marcus nodded, understanding the metaphor. "And the catalyst for your transformation?" "Betrayal," she admitted, or perhaps more accurately, the revelation of truth that had been there all along. She took a sip of wine, considering. "Nathan's affair forced me to confront how much I had compromised myself within our marriage. The toads were just a creative expression of that realization. A remarkably effective expression," Marcus added with a chuckle. Regina laughed softly, remembering Sophia's terrified screams as toads converged on her. "The scientist in me appreciates elegant solutions." The crackling fire cast warm light across the room, illuminating the space Regina had reclaimed entirely as her own. Gone were the few masculine touches Nathan had contributed to the decor, replaced by items that reflected her personal aesthetic. Academic awards displayed proudly on the walls, scientific journals stacked on the coffee table, the antique microscope she had inherited from her grandfather given a place of honor on the bookshelf. "I received a curious email last week," Regina said after a comfortable silence, "from Sophia Winters." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "The former mistress herself? What did she want? To apologize?" Surprisingly enough, Regina shook her head slightly, still bemused by the unexpected communication. "She's in therapy, apparently, working through her relationship patterns. She wrote that she was sorry for her role in causing pain, though she maintained that Nathan had told her our marriage was already over." "Classic misdirection from Nathan," Marcus observed. "Do you believe her apology was sincere?" Regina considered the question. "I think so. She seemed genuinely remorseful. She also mentioned continuing nightmares about the incident, though she was careful not to directly accuse me of orchestrating it." "Did you respond?" "I did," Regina nodded, thanked her for the apology, and wished her well in Chicago. Then I suggested a therapist specializing in wildlife phobias, since her fear of toads seemed particularly acute. Marcus nearly choked on his wine. "You didn't!" "I most certainly did," Regina confirmed with a mischievous smile. "I even provided contact information for a respected specialist. Very professional of me, I thought." They laughed together, the sound filling the cozy room with warmth that rivaled the fire's glow. Outside, darkness had settled over the property, and through the window, Regina could see stars emerging in the clear night sky. "And Nathan?" Marcus asked after their laughter subsided. "Any communication from him?" "Not directly," Regina replied. "I heard through university channels that he didn't make partner. The Harrison case collapsed when key evidence was deemed inadmissible. His relationship with Sophia ended spectacularly, according to mutual acquaintances, and he's reportedly developed an intense aversion to countryside properties." She smiled faintly. "Karma, it seems, requires no human assistance to accomplish its work." Marcus reached across the sofa, taking her hand in his. "Are you happy, Regina, with how everything has unfolded?" The question deserved thoughtful consideration, and Regina gave it precisely that. Was she happy? Not in the simplistic way she might have defined happiness before. The absence of conflict, the appearance of success, the fulfillment of social expectations. This was something deeper, more substantial. "I'm fulfilled," she answered finally. "I'm pursuing work that matters to me, building relationships based on mutual respect, and living authentically for perhaps the first time in my adult life." She squeezed his hand gently. "So, yes, I believe that constitutes happiness in its most meaningful form." The following morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows. Regina woke early, slipping quietly from bed to avoid disturbing Marcus. She pulled on a sweater against the morning chill and made her way downstairs and out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand. The property spread before her, peaceful in the early light. Near the pond, a group of American toads basked on sun-warmed rocks, their presence now a source of amusement rather than vengeance. Regina sipped her coffee, appreciating the perfect stillness of the moment. The sound of the screen door opening announced Marcus's arrival. He joined her at the porch railing, his own mug steaming in the cool air. "Beautiful morning," he observed, following her gaze to the distant pond. "Our friends are enjoying the sunshine." "Nature in balance," Regina agreed, "every creature in its proper place." They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist that clung to the lower portions of the property. In the distance, a pair of red-tailed hawks circled lazily on thermal currents, their keen eyes scanning the ground below. "I was thinking," Marcus said after a while, "about your research on environmental pheromones and their applications. Have you considered expanding the scope to include potential restoration applications, chemical signals that could help re-establish disrupted ecosystems?" Regina turned toward him, interest kindling in her eyes. "Creating balance where it's been lost? That's an intriguing direction." "Exactly," Marcus nodded, enthusiasm building in his voice. "Your work could have profound implications for habitat restoration projects worldwide, using nature's own communication systems to heal environmental damage." "I'd need to develop new experimental protocols," Regina mused, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Perhaps starting with small controlled ecosystems before moving to field tests. The pond here would make an excellent preliminary research site," Marcus suggested. "Small, contained, with a diverse but manageable biological community." Regina smiled, setting her mug on the porch railing. "Dr. Fletcher, are you proposing a professional collaboration to accompany our personal one?" "I believe I am, Dr. White," he replied, matching her formal tone with a playful smile. "Our research interests align remarkably well. It would be scientifically irresponsible not to explore the potential synergies." "A compelling argument," Regina acknowledged. She turned back to the property, envisioning it transformed into a research station, a place where scientific discovery and personal fulfillment coexisted perfectly. "I accept your proposal. Let's write up a preliminary research plan this weekend." The rest of the day passed in a pleasant blur of scientific discussion and practical planning. They sketched initial research protocols, identified potential variables to monitor, and discussed how Regina's grant funding might support their collaborative work. By evening, a clear vision had emerged, a multi-year project that would unite their expertise while advancing both their careers. As they prepared dinner together, Regina found herself reflecting once more on the unexpected path her life had taken. 6 months ago, standing in the surveillance blind watching Nathan and Sophia flee from an army of toads, she had felt a cold satisfaction that bordered on emptiness. The revenge had been sweet, but ultimately insufficient to heal the deeper wounds of betrayal and self-betrayal. The true healing had come afterward, through reclaiming her academic ambitions, reconnecting with her authentic self, and building relationships that nourished rather than diminished her. The toads had been merely the catalyst, the beginning of a transformation far more profound than she had anticipated. Later that evening, As they sat on the porch watching stars emerge above the darkening landscape, Marcus produced a small box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he admitted, turning the box nervously in his hands. "This isn't a marriage proposal. I think we both agree that's not what this relationship needs right now. But it is a proposal of sorts." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver key on a chain, a symbolic key to my apartment in the city. "I'm not asking you to move in, just acknowledging that my space is your space, whenever you want it to be." Regina accepted the gift, touched by the thoughtfulness behind it. The key represented exactly what their relationship had become, a connection based on choice rather than obligation, offering freedom within commitment. "I have something for you too," she said, reaching into her pocket. She withdrew a small object and placed it in his palm, an antique brass key, the original key to this house, from before the renovation. "I found it in a drawer last week and had it cleaned and preserved. It doesn't open any locks anymore, but it's symbolic," Marcus finished, understanding immediately. "Your sanctuary becoming our sanctuary." "Precisely." Regina smiled as he examined the key with evident appreciation for its historical significance. Not replacing the current keys, just honoring the property's past, while acknowledging its present purpose. Marcus carefully pocketed the antique key, then leaned forward to kiss her gently. "Two transformations," he murmured, "chemical and personal." "Two transformations," Regina echoed, feeling the weight of the silver key in her palm. Not a burden, but a choice freely offered and accepted. Behind them, from the direction of the pond, came the distinct sound of toads beginning their evening chorus, a natural symphony that once served as the soundtrack to her revenge, but now represented something entirely different, the beautiful, messy, perfectly balanced ecosystem that her life had become. Regina smiled, listening to the toads' rhythmic croaking. Life had a curious symmetry sometimes. The very creatures she had used as instruments of vengeance had become symbols of her restoration, reminding her that even the most painful disruptions could lead to new and better equilibrium. Her marriage had been an irreversible reaction, yes, but the life that emerged from its dissolution was proving to be more authentic, more fulfilling than anything she had experienced before. The toads had taught her that sometimes invasion was merely the prelude to reclamation. Sometimes chaos was the necessary precursor to a more perfect order. And sometimes the most elegant scientific solution was simply to allow nature, both external and internal, to find its own perfect balance. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.